Mr. Mariotte.
Thank you. I am Michael Mariotte, Executive Director of Nuclear Information and Resource Service. We are the Information and Networking Center for people concerned about nuclear power. We work with hundreds of organizations and tens of thousands of people across the United States and tens of thousands more across the world. Thank you for holding this meeting. You've heard from the petition sponsors, and we support them. You've heard from the engineers, and we support them. You have heard from citizens who have been working on reactors that impact their communities, and we support them. I guess it's my job to try to bring the perspective of the public on this issue, a perspective that has certainly broadened and deepened since March 11th. Quite frankly, the public doesn't understand you. They really don't understand why a petition like this is even an issue of discussion. You know, I saw a poll recently that indicated 95% of the people in the world know about Fukushima. 95%. It takes a really extraordinary event for 95% of the people in the world to know about it. Yet they know about Fukushima. They saw Mark I reactors explode there and release toxic radiation across the world. And they know that's not a good thing, and that something has to be done to make sure that never happens again. But most of those 95% don't know yet. Is that, as has been referred to in the petition, has been referred to by others here today, is that you, this agency, meaning this agency, knew 40 years ago that this is exactly what would happen if a Mark I reactor were challenged. Your predecessor agency, the Atomic Energy Commission, was told by your own safety officials that the Mark I reactors were deficient and shouldn't be allowed to operate. And that plea was denied by the top official at the AEC, not because the Mark I's were safe, but because banning them, quote, could well be the end of nuclear power. And so the US AEC, and then as it morphed into the NRC, you began a policy of relying on luck as the fundamental protection for the public from the Mark I's, a hope that nothing would happen that would challenge them. In 1986, as it's been referred to, you were reminded again by your top safety official about what would happen if a Mark I were challenged. It would explode with a 90% probability of containment failure. Rather than close the reactors at that time to protect the public from their deficient design, this agency chose the Band-Aid approach. And so we saw the installation of containment venting systems, with the theory being, well, since these reactors will explode and cause a catastrophe if they're challenged, if we vent them first and release some of the hydrogen gas and some of the radiation, maybe they won't explode, and release all of the radiation. In other words, rather than try to address the fundamental design deficiencies of these reactors, the NRC decided to try to compensate for them. It was like putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg. It didn't help much, but at least it was doing something. But the primary defense was still dumb luck. Of course, as we saw at Fukushima, the luck ran out. The containment venting system didn't work. Turns out it needed power, and there wasn't any. And so these GE Mark I reactors did exactly what was predicted 40 years earlier. They exploded, their containments failed, and enormous amounts of radiation were released. But instead of learning the lesson and now closing these deficient reactors, the NRC staff, through the Fukushima Task Force, is now proposing to make the venting systems a little better. That's something. But it's compensating for the failure of the compensation you've already made for the design deficiencies. The Band-Aid you put on 25 years ago is fraying, so you're proposing to put another Band-Aid on over it and crossing your fingers for continued luck in the U.S., the luck that ran out in Japan. What we don't understand, and what the public doesn't understand, is why you don't just close them. The Mark I reactors account for less than 4% of the U.S. electricity supply. There is plenty of reserve power on hand to cover that. If they all close tomorrow, in terms of electricity availability, no one would ever notice. That would seem to be the prudent thing to do if the goal is to protect the public health and safety. Relying on Band-Aids and luck certainly has proven insufficient. But the Mark I's, of course, are mostly older and paid for. And for the utilities that own them, well, they surely generate a lot more than 4% of their profits. And that's a power full incentive for those utilities to keep them running, regardless of the risk to the public. And after all, in the U.S., our luck has held out for 40 years now. Well, you know, we're tired of that kind of thinking. Actually, we're fed up with that kind of thinking. It's too familiar. Large corporations with facilitation from government agencies putting profits above our economic interests, above our environmental interests, above our health and safety. You know, that's the same reason ever-growing numbers of people are occupying Wall Street and why that movement is spreading to city after city. We're fed up with the concept that the interests of these large corporations, and in this case large nuclear utilities and reactor manufacturers, constantly are placed above those of the American people. This isn't a normal matter of regulatory dispute between the NRC and some public interest groups. You know, we all know that happens frequently. We all work together. We all know our roles in trying to resolve those kinds of disputes. This issue goes far beyond that. This is a matter of life and death. This is about our very lives and those of our children and grandchildren. This is about the very existence of our homes and communities. There are at least 80,000 people in Japan who already have lost their homes and their communities and their livelihoods. We are already seeing health effects, and we will be seeing more in the years to come, especially among the children. And we don't want to see that happen here. No one knows what the next challenge to one of these reactors will be. Probably won't be an earthquake tsunami. Might be a hurricane, might be a large solar flare, operator error, broken pipe, something we don't foresee at all. But we do know, as you have known for 40 years, as we have known for 40 years, what will happen when that challenge comes. The reactor will fail, and more communities will be lost and more lives destroyed. And that will be on your hands, because you have the power to change that. You have the power to close down these reactors and stop with the Band-Aids and stop relying on pure dumb luck as a protective measure. If you prefer, maybe we could expand the Occupy movement from Wall Street in Washington to Oyster Creek in Dresden and Vermont Yankee and the rest, and just go in there and turn these things off ourselves. To be honest, we would rather that our government do the right thing and act on behalf of the public for a change. So I urge you to not only adopt this petition, the parts that you are considering now, but to go back and reverse your earlier decision to deny parts of this petition and instead adopt it in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.